Chat some more. Well, hello to anyone who's joining, catching up, and Vicky was just saying something wonderful as we were just getting settled and getting started, which was just to encourage different people in the room to yeah, that what we're each saying, what different ones of us are contributing is really helping. And that's exactly what I was going to start by saying as well, that actually it's the biggest value in these evenings is what we learn from each other. It's not one of us is an expert, or that it's just a kind of a time for me just to talk or anything. But yeah, so please pitch in and please share, as we've been doing in previous weeks. This is our penultimate one. We plan to do 6, and so this is our 5th. So we've done leadership equaling influence was our first one. We've done competing priorities. We've done character, and then last time we did creating positive change. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to think about if there's anything that you've maybe changed since we last met. So I'll have a couple I can share with you, but anything that you kind of particularly got out of last time. But so next time we're going to be looking at calling and gifting. As you know, we've been looking at Elijah on our Sundays recently, and one of the questions that sort of echoed in the back of my mind that I haven't yet included in any of the preaching or anything that we've done, but it's the question about Elijah's gifting, basically how gifted a man or how gifted a leader do we think Elijah was? Because if you think about his ministry and his life, I mean, this is one of the 2 guys from the Old Testament that Jesus basically meets with on the Mount of Transfiguration. That's how highly thought of Elijah is. He's next to Moses, pretty much. I mean, Moses represents the law and Elijah represents the prophets, really. That's probably why they're both there, rather than just because they're Jesus' best mates or anything. But so they kind of represent the whole of the Old Testament in both being there. But I don't think it's not like he's crazily gifted. It's not like he's an amazing. You think of someone like as Isaiah, who who brings these incredible prophecies, or you think of even someone like a Joseph, who clearly has this incredible administrative gift, kind of alongside God equipping him, or you think of some of the like a Deborah or other kind of Old Testament heroes who clearly are gifted. Elijah, he doesn't, not that we know, doesn't actually do anything really other than pray and see God work in extraordinary power. And I thought to myself, isn't that an encouraging thought? Because a lot of the time I don't feel very gifted. I don't feel like I'm not, I don't feel like I'm in a stream of competence or anything. I feel like there's a lot of scrambling in the background. But God uses him, and God clearly calls him. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next time. So that's a little teaser for next time, kind of calling and gifting and how they kind of work in us as leaders. But this time we're going to be talking about being servant-hearted. So servant-hearted leadership. And we're going to actually start with a little bit of a Bible study and just look at scripture as a kind of what we root this in. And so that'll be really fun, and I think really helpful, and it will really challenge the sort of the culture and the kind of the norms in our world of perhaps what leadership sometimes looks like. But just by way of recapping, last time we looked at this idea of creating positive change, and that's one of the things that we do as leaders. Remember, we're all leaders, we all influence different people in different places and even ourselves. And so actually one of the things we get to do, and God does through us, is bring about change and transformation. And so we particularly talked last time about us we had this phrase, you do what you do because of what you think of you. Do you remember that idea of like actually change and leadership coming out of that a sense of identity?
Mm.
And we talked quite a lot about habits as well, and how change coming through the kind of the little choices rather than maybe just one big choice, but it's a kind of they're kind of incremental. And so just in case you've had a chance to think of something, any kind of any areas in life where you've sought to bring about some type of positive change. It's only been a month. We've normally done these every other month, so the gap's been a bit shorter. So no pressure to sort of say anything too grandiose, but I don't know if we've been thinking about changes or anything that God's been putting his finger on or anything like that.
I felt habits was good because it also came up on Sunday, Tim.
Hmm,
You
good.
talked about your own life and how that what are you doing here, Elijah?
Yeah,
That tied up with me to the fact of small. It doesn't have to be major changes, but like small changes.
yeah.
Like, and it's also one of the things that someone said. I don't know which, but it's planning,
Hmm,
planning those changes. And I thought that was important for me
yeah,
because sometimes God can speak and challenge you about something, but unless you like say, okay, I'm going to plan for that, it just like, if you're like me, it just goes into the air
yeah.
quite often. So I think that was a challenge for me. Changes, small changes, and making habit stacking, basically.
Habit stacking. That was a really good phrase, wasn't it? Yeah, linking one thing to another. I think
Yes,
that was an example like cleaning your teeth and doing something alongside cleaning your
that's
teeth.
right.
So a habit that's already established, sticking another one next to it. So we talked about a thankfulness journal next to
Yes.
brushing your teeth is literally what we have outside our bathroom up here. Um, so yeah, it's quite helpful, isn't it? That sort of thing. And planning. I think Craig Groeschel calls it like pre-deciding, because it's
Mm,
hard to make good decisions in the moment. I find, but sometimes
mm,
you're more able to make better decisions in advance, aren't we?
mm. I
Really
think
good.
making a note of it, that's important, to when a thought, like even if it's not in a preach or something, but if a God thought comes to you, write it down
Mm,
because then you're more likely to implement it, aren't you?
yeah,
And remember it.
yeah, yeah. Wonderful, Vicky. Thank you. Any other thoughts from anyone? I'll go for it, Alice.
Something that was God. If you remember, I did say I was going to start reading
Yeah,
over
you
my
remember.
dinner, which I did do.
Oh,
Uh,
well, good for
Ended up
you.
late, but then I got one of my bouts of pain and I couldn't cope. So it kind of fell by the way, and I chose the wrong book. So I have now bought some different books. It's a very tedious. I mean, I'm sure I think it won some kind of prize, but it's one of them, where you go, really? I
Yeah,
don't think this. I've got something much more light-hearted, which
right.
I'm starting uh, shortly.
Good, good for you. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Alice. I like that actually. Almost kind of that incremental element and making we don't have to make it super hard for ourselves.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah. I I'm not massively. I mentioned this on Sunday actually, very briefly, the social media thing. I'm not super into social media, but I had I've been selling a couple of things on Facebook Marketplace, and my computer was kind of automatically signed in to Facebook, so I could just like Google Facebook, and it would come up, and I'd be instantly signed in. And it was just becoming like this kind of thing that stole time off me.
mm,
And I was like, in a moment of like being a bit bored or being a bit distracted, just kind of looking at Facebook and things, and I was like, ugh. I don't know if anyone else here struggles with social media stuff in the way it like tries to keep you. I say this to my kids that it's not neutral. It is actively trying to keep you. That it can
mm,
sell more adverts and you know, all those sorts of things, if it keeps you in that. So I was just, you know, when you kind of almost wake up out of this sort of stupor of scrolling or being kind of drawn into sort of thing, like kind of the clickbaity sort of stuff. And anyway, I was like, that I felt that, like, what are you doing here, Tim? Question would really resonate with me. And so I actually said to Sam, I realized that if I got Sam to change my Facebook, or if I changed my Facebook password and Sam knew it, but I didn't, that meant that I could occasionally access it. Like, okay, there's a few people I occasionally link with from like years ago, but I could just do that like in like windows of time that were kind of pre-decided, like were kind of assigned, rather than it being something that like stole time off me. So that was like, I felt like, oh yeah, that was a really good, like, positive change. That was like that sort of pre-deciding thing, and just a helpful, like, some helpful practical stuff around it.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not so good in the moment, so it's helpful to do that sort of planning in advance stuff. Any more for any more? Shall we dive into this week? Cool. Okay. Well, really good to keep thinking about those things, keep allowing God to gently encourage us and gently nudge us into those sorts of things. Yeah, and yeah, keep sharing between us as well. Right, so servant-hearted leadership. I think it's a great idea, isn't it? It's a great phrase, to be a servant-hearted leader. It's the type of leader I think we would all agree to being. And so tonight we're going to look at what that might look like, some of the kind of challenges, some encouragement around it. But where else to start but to read about Jesus, and probably the best example we have of being a servant-hearted leader, which is Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And so we'll have a little read of John 13 together, if that's okay. And then we'll just observe and discuss what jumps out for us. And share together some sort of some of our ideas and thoughts about what stands out in Jesus' leadership. So I don't know if we have possibly a volunteer who can quickly find John chapter 13, and we'll read 1 to 17, if that's okay, although a lot of the focus might be in the early verses, but it's good to sort of have the whole passage. And towards the end, Jesus very much encourages us to do what he does in terms of that kind of style of leadership. So any volunteers who mind reading for us? It would be good for all of us to read along, but
So I've got it if you want.
yeah, great. Thanks, Alice.
It's 1 to which, 1 to where do you want?
1 to 17, if that's all right.
17, yeah, okay. It was now the day before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that his hour had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. He had always loved those in the world who were his own, and he loved them to the very end. Jesus and his disciples were at supper. The devil had already put into the heart of Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, the thought of betraying Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him complete power. He knew that he had come from God and was going to God. So he rose from the table, took off his outer garment and tied a towel round his waist. Then he poured some water into a wash basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and dry them with the towel around his waist. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Are you going to wash my feet, Lord?" Jesus answered him, "You don't understand now what I'm doing, but you will understand later." Peter declared, "Never at any time will you wash my feet."
Wow.
"If I don't wash your feet," Jesus answered, "you'll no longer be my disciple." Simon Peter answered, "Lord, don't wash only my feet then, wash my hands and head too." Jesus said, "Those who have taken a bath are completely clean and don't have to wash themselves except for their feet. All of you are clean, all except one." Jesus already knew who was going to betray him. That's why he said, all of you, except one, are clean." After Jesus had washed their feet, he put his outer garment back on and returned to his place at the table. "Do you understand what I've just done to you?" he asked. "You call me teacher and Lord, and it's right that you do so because that's what I am. I, your Lord and teacher, have just washed your feet. You then should wash one another's feet. I've set an example for you so that you will do just what I've done for you. I'm telling you the truth. No slaves are greater than their master, and no messengers are greater than the one who sent them. Now that you know this truth, how happy will you be if you put it into practice?"
Yes. Wow. Thank you, God, for your word. Love that. What an amazing scene, hey? So what stands out for us? What stands out in Jesus' leadership? We're learning about being leaders in this time together. So let's kind of share together anything that stands out, and it can be as big a revelation or as simple an observation as you like. Go for it, PJ. Kick us off.
Just the fact that Jesus knew who he came from. So I think much easier to be to be a servant when you know where your identity is. You're not trying to prove yourself. You know exactly who you are, and therefore then it's easier to serve others because you're not trying to establish yourself. You are who you are, and you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, brilliant. Secure in his identity.
Oh, so good. That's what I thought as well. I noticed as well. To start off with, he knew who he was, where he was coming from, what he was going.
Yeah, knew where he came from, knew where he was going. There's no need to kind of grab power or try and sort of shuffle his way up the pecking order. But yeah, we've probably all experienced insecure leaders. We've probably, dare I say it, probably all been insecure leaders. I know I have. And we know the difference between someone who's just like they know who they are, and they know who they're not, and they're able to function from that security rather than desperately trying to prove themselves, or prove themselves to others, or even prove themselves to themselves. There can be some of that shadow stuff going on in a leader, can't they? I'm trying to almost convince myself that I'm good enough, or I have authority, or whatever. So yeah, very good. But I think that's such a key one. Yeah. Anything else?
He had the authority. It said he knew he had the authority that God had given him. That was another thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. What was the phrase?
It said, Jesus knew the Father had given him the authority over everything. So it's that security in knowing his place. Didn't have to fight for authority. In leaders, sometimes you see people like trying to gain authority, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we haven't got it. It's got to come from God, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing that is new.
Yeah. So the word that jumped out for me, I think it may be the same section, is the word power. Is that the one is that the bit you're referring to, Vicky? Verse 3. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. I think we'll talk. Does it say authority in your version? Does it? Yeah, cool. So that's really helpful. Yeah, power or authority. They both could be seen as ugly words, couldn't they? In our society. Oh, he's the one who has all the power, or he's the one in authority. They're sort of almost kind of degrading words a little bit. So, but yeah, so Jesus, he had power, but he wasn't scrambling for it. Yeah. But where did his power come from?
The Father.
His Father.
Yeah. So it's not something he had to generate himself, but it's bestowed, it's given, it's that's really helpful to think about. Our power, our authority isn't because we're clever, because we've made it happen ourselves, because we've I don't know, bullied others or trodden on others to get to a place of power or authority. but it's given, it's delegated. And isn't that the place of real power and real authority, given by the Father? Yeah, and so that's true, obviously very much true for Jesus, but it's also true for us in a different way, but a real way.
I know it's probably. Oh, sorry, Vicky, go on.
No, I've talked enough.
I love hearing you talk. Do you? I know it's a practical thing, but when Jesus took off his outer garments, that could represent vulnerability, and it could represent, you know, an openness and giving of even more of himself, and saying, look, this is, you know, this is beneath, not beneath me. This is like under the surface stuff here that I'm offering to you. I'm not sure if that's.
I love it.
Fair, but it could be another little nugget.
I love it. I agree. I've written that down when I made a list on this yesterday. I'd written down, took off outer clothing. He needed no special uniform, no rank markings, nothing external needed. And I like the extra level you've gone to about, it's like he's making himself vulnerable. That's his leadership. That's what servant leadership looks like. It's like a vulnerable, real place. I mean, I don't know what you're picturing, Jesus. I'm picturing him shirtless. I don't know if that's right. I don't want to be, but like, it's just like, this is who I am. I'm not trying to pretend. I'm not masking. I'm not putting on
like quite exposed, isn't he, as well? Quite exposed, because, you know, it's yeah.
Really good. Love that. Love the vulnerability thing. I hadn't spotted. I love that. Cool.
Yeah,
we're cooking here, guys. Let's keep going. What else?
What I was going to say was that I loved when Esther shared on Sunday morning. It was about that whole thing. It was about the fact that we, on our own, we needn't think that we're clever, we're good, we can do this, that, and the other, because all the honor goes to God, wasn't it? And Jesus had all that power. All the honor went to his Father. He didn't grasp things for himself.
Yeah. Paige?
Just another kind of thought on the authority and power thing, and more from the recipient of those. You know, I think certainly our culture is very suspicious of authority and power because of how it's been abused. But actually, when you are in certain situations, if you've got someone kind of leading, you've got someone to look to, you can trust, that, you know, because they kind of see the whole picture. So you can get their thing. You're just thinking of a child to their parent, you know, they'll be playing around but always keeping an eye on the person that they feel safe with. And so I think, you know, with Jesus, you know, it's because he was, you know, his authority power was a pure one that you can turn to and feel safe with, rather than be, you know, overborne by.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, that's really good. Any more? We'll go for it, Ike.
Yeah. To me, I can see the example which Jesus gave his disciple. And from the last verse here, they say, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. So that example Jesus shows. So we're talking of leadership. So as a leader, so we'll have that humbleness. We should have that humbleness to able to serve others, because serving required to be humble.
Yeah.
And from the history, so normally people that used to do this task were the slaves, people that were meant to serve their lords. So this is exactly what Jesus did on this occasion. he started washing his disciples' feet. So it's really it's really good example, because we can see from many people, or from many ministries, ministries of God, ministers of God, even sometimes the way people, you can see then that you begin to question, is it from God, or this is just, from personal things, or I don't know how I'll put it. But actually we learn from this, that if you are really, if you want to really save, so you have to have that humbleness, ready to save others, because that is what God called us to do.
Yeah. This is, it's what we're called to do. Yeah, that humility. I think at Ike, I'd heard that washing feet. We've probably all heard preachers on this. Washing feet was the job of servants or slaves, and I've even heard that Jewish servants weren't used. But actually, it was non-Jewish servants that washed feet. And there's a real sense of like embarrassment within this story and shame, because the meal's already started. And so this is something that should have been done before the meal started, but the meal's in progress. We can read that in verse 2. And so actually there's something that's like a massive miss, a massive omission. And, we don't need to use our imagination too much to recognize this is a grotty job, and dirty, sweaty, cheesy feet. And Jesus is not too lowly for him. He's willing to do something that even the Jewish servants wouldn't do, and even something that would have caused great embarrassment for the host. But Jesus gets on and does it. Yeah, beautiful example. Like more shocking example than we can really grasp from our culture, I think. Even though I wouldn't really particularly want to wash any of your feet. But it's even more from their culture. Couple more. I thought I just loved how practical Jesus is. So, like, what servant leadership look like? Well, actually, it kicks into some real practical ways. So, I love the fact that he gets the bowl, and like he pours the water out, and he wraps a towel around his waist, and he dries them with the John tells us he pours water into a basin, begins to wash the disciples' feet, and he dries them with the towel that was wrapped around him. I'm like, this is smart. Like, this isn't just I'll just do a few of the like the low, like I'll just do something to set a quick example. But actually I think he's doing a thorough job. Like we all probably know that if you're washing your feet properly, they need drying really well. And I just love that Jesus is practical and he's thorough, and there's like an intricacy and a detail that sometimes we think like leadership is all kind of lofty ideas and all kind of ethereal and up in the air. But actually servant leadership is very pragmatic and practical. And you think about, oh, I don't just need water, I also need a towel. And it's like, getting the detail, and it's the simple details, right? I think that really struck me as I was reading that. Just the kind of practical stuff within it. Like just picturing Jesus on his knees, exactly as you're saying about vulnerability, Erica, and then that like he puts himself at the lowest place. And I mean, John, if you may know this about John's gospel, but it pivots on this story. So verse 1 says, just before the Passover festival, Jesus knew his hour has come to leave this world and go to the Father. And so from this moment on, it's the kind of descent to the cross. And it's having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So we did a series on John's gospel, or the second half of John's gospel, like good few years ago at Grace Church, and it was called Loved to the End. And just think like servant-hearted leaders love people to the end. It's not love them a bit. It's not love them for 5 minutes do your stint on the rota. Actually, we're called to kind of a Jesus style of loving and a Jesus style of leading, which is to the end. And it's, as we were hearing in that preach a couple of weeks ago about laying down our lives and taking up our cross. And this Jesus loving people to the end started with washing their feet. I just think this is so rich and so beautiful. Anyway, I'm in danger of preaching too much here, but so I just thought it was worth just thinking about that word power, that in the NIV it's the word power. And so you think, well, who holds the cards, or where does the power really lie? And we're used to the idea, aren't we, of power flowing downwards, and that sort of corrupt version of power that PJ was talking about. We're used to a distortion of power. But Jesus like flips the power pyramid, instead of it being like a top down, he puts himself at the bottom and he gives power away. So Jesus isn't afraid of power, but how does he use it? He gives power away, or we often use the word empower, and I know it's spelled EMPOWER, isn't it? It's spelled empower, but I quite like thinking of it as like in power, like putting power into others, like giving it away, delegating it, and releasing it. And Ephesians 4 verse 11 lists some of those different ministries that serve within the local church and actually over local churches as well, the Ephesians 4 gifts. This is Ephesians 4:11, but it starts with these words. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up. And I've often read that verse and focused on apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. But I thought it was so helpful to think Christ himself gave, he empowers, he gives. He was always doing that, wasn't he? He was releasing the 12, releasing the 72, the Great Commission to all of us to go out. And this is Jesus. This is what Jesus' leadership was like, to empower others, not to do it all himself. We know he himself died and rose again to save us, but his plan was then to release his disciples out into the world and to get involved and be included in things and to equip his people for works of service. So we get to do the work together. And so I just think that's just like Jesus, just the greatest example of this, and it's so encouraging and so releasing. And so then these words echo with us, as Ike's already pulled out for us. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done. So Jesus does this amazing act and lived in this amazing way. This wasn't unique, and he, his whole modus operandi was to release and empower and give away. But he says, actually, this is you should do as I've done. This is now, you now get to do this. You now get to serve others and empower others and release others, and keep the power pyramid flipped, so that we put ourselves at the bottom and lift others up and release others to go way beyond where we go. And so I think that's so inspiring, and I think that that's what we're talking about when we're talking about servant leadership. And I want us just to think about this question as we kind of continue this evening. How do we I want us to think about, developing the heart of a servant. So where's this a heart thing? But also the hands of a servant. And maybe just a little question for us to discuss. What's the difference between the heart of a servant and the hands of a servant? And why are both needed? So why don't we just take like 20 seconds just to think of our own answer to that? What's the difference between the heart of a servant and the hands of a servant? And why are both needed? Why don't you scribble down a couple of thoughts you've got? somewhere. Scribble them on your phone or type them somewhere, and then maybe we can share a couple of thoughts with each other. Concerned not to put anyone on the spot too much, but I don't know if someone who hasn't had a chance to share yet might want to have a go sharing a couple of your thoughts on this. Welcome, Carolyn, by the way. I didn't say that as we were chatting.
Oh, it took me half an hour to find the email. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Bless you.
It's not your fault, it's my fault.
This link, the prayer and worship, the prayer meeting link, is the one I nearly always use, by the way. So it's always a good one to have a guess at. Yeah, so I found that the kind of distinction helpful. Hearts of a servant, hands of a servant. I'm wondering if anyone's got any thoughts on maybe the difference.
I'm thinking like the
both
heart of the servant is having God's heart to serve and do things his way. Whereas the hands of the servant is like the practical stuff.
Yeah.
So
good.
they're different, but you need both to work together.
Yeah, really good.
Yes,
Yeah, thanks, Chan. Alice, and then
I
Erica.
think if you don't have the heart, then you're not going to see the opportunities to serve.
Yeah.
So it's about that, having the capability of being open to opportunities to serve, whereas the hands are about having the ability to do whatever it is that the serving is. And that doesn't mean in your own strength, it just means offering those hands being God's hands, because they're the only hands he's got at the moment.
Really good. I love that. Yeah, being God's hands. Thank you. Erica, I think you put your hand up, didn't you?
Yeah.
Erica, then PJ.
I'll be really quick, PJ.
No worries.
Basically, I just wrote down, well, the heart is your why and hands is your how.
Ooh, write that one down. Very succinct. Thank you. Paige?
I'm blown away by the succinctness. I just, as while we were kind of pondering that, I was thought of the scripture in James 2:18, and I think there's a link, but you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds. So sometimes you've kind of almost got to have them both, because the heart's the desire and the hands is what works that out. So difficult to be doing deeds if you don't have the heart for it, and difficult to have the heart for it and not do something about it.
Yeah. Really good. That's a good link, actually, the James verse. Very helpful. I wonder about myself if I've sometimes had the hands, or like I've had the what's kind of on the surface looks like servant leadership or servantness, serving, but really my heart's not been in it. Like I just recognize that in myself at times over the years. But I also reckon it's a challenge we'd want to bring really gently at Grace Church, because I hope we're very low pressure with things like serving, like even like rotas and stuff. But I think there is something, isn't there, about actually, like what you're just saying there, Peach, it kind of the rubber needs to hit the road somewhere, somehow. And it might look different from one person to the other. But yeah, I think it's a really good combination that you kind of have one missing. Yeah. There's something about character as well, isn't there? I think when Jan, you were talking about heart stuff. What you were saying made me think, yeah, there's something about, it's not a skin deep thing, is it? There's
No.
something where God needs to get right under our skin and right into the core of our being.
Mm.
Do you think, I wonder if we burn out much, much quicker if that heart isn't there? That we haven't had like our heart broken. We haven't had some of our like ego or our pride kind of dealt with by the gospel and dealt with through Jesus' kindness and grace, and sometimes just helping reveal some of our sort of ulterior motives that I certainly have. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's like a sanctification often going on in our hearts. Just like, you know, sometimes we can get a bit cheesed off or a bit fed up, or, you know, things can kind of grate on us, or we can just feel like, oh, stuff it, I don't want to do that anymore. And like sometimes God's just like helping us, just refining your heart a bit, and just kind of chipping away a little bit as to what your motives really are. Sometimes our ulterior motives can slightly creep in. We can realize we're doing things for other reasons at times. I know I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes in all we do is because it's because I have to. Sometimes become in something is I have to. So I use just our hands and we forget to use the heart. But when we remember our motivation and the different in all we can do with heart, we will be totally different.
Yeah.
The consequences will be absolutely different if we do all of these things with heart. If we forget to use our hearts, because sometimes we are very busy, we do many things, and we have to. So yeah, and the results are different if we use the heart and the right motivation as well.
Love that. Yeah. Superb, Esther. How often do we serve because we have to, rather than because, I mean, I like the phrase, I like being reminded of the phrase, well, you don't have to, but you get to. It's a privilege. What an amazing, like, when we really remember and think, it's an extraordinary privilege to be able to be the hands of Jesus. Yeah. Love that. Love that. Oh, there's some rich stuff here, isn't there? I don't know if anyone else is feeling challenged, but I certainly am. Okay. In a moment, I'd love us just to share some examples of servant leadership we've experienced and why it impacted us the most. Okay, so just a bit of warning to think about. If there's someone, you don't necessarily need to name them by name, particularly if they're known among us, but you could just say, person X or person Y. But the focus I'd rather than the individual is the impact, why it impacted us the most. But I'd like to just share a checklist. This is as you know, we're sort of leaning on this book a little bit. And he doesn't use John 13 or anything, which he probably should have done, but he does give this little checklist, and I thought I'd just read it out, and we may come back to it just at the end of our time as well. But this is his checklist on it's like servant leadership. He said, John Maxwell says, don't rely on position or title. Choose to believe in people and their potential. So, you know, that's helping us start to think, okay, servant leadership is about others. It's about pushing them forward. Try and see things from the perspective of others. So create an environment of encouragement. I love that. And measure your success by how much value I add to other people. That's such a good question. Like, how are you measuring success, isn't it? In any area of life, and particularly in leadership. What does success look like? What's a win? At the end of this month, end of this week, end of this year, end of your career, what's going to count? What's success? What's a win? And so to measure success by how much value I add to others. So we'll talk a bit more about some of those and some questions we can ask ourselves to help us serve people better in a moment from John Maxwell. But I thought it would be quite rich to talk about examples of servant leadership we've experienced and why it impacted us the most. I know that's putting us on the spot massively, but if there's an example that pops into your mind, maybe go with that one rather than thinking about it too much, and maybe think about like not just the thoughts but the feelings that went along with it. How did it make you feel? So I've got a couple of my own examples in case no one else can think of any, but I'll leave it for a moment or two. Again, why don't you just try and write something down, even if you don't feel comfortable talking, that's okay, but at least do a bit of thinking for yourself as to how it impacted you, what difference it made, how it made you feel. Anyone feel like they've got an example they could share? Alice, thank you.
If nobody else has.
No,
So most of my experiences of servant leaders are in work, not in the church. And one in particular, I don't think he was Christian, but I don't know. I went abroad with him to launch a product and couldn't cope in the room they'd allocated me in the hotel. It was a long, long time ago. And so he promptly swapped rooms. And when I still couldn't get through the bathroom door in his room, which had a larger bathroom, he took the bathroom door off its hinges. But it didn't faze him at all. It was just something he was doing.
Yeah.
And for me, that was servant leadership, because actually what he was doing was God's work. Because if I hadn't been able to do that piece of work, my career would have gone in a very different direction.
Incredible. I love how practical that is, as well as the heart. There's heart and hands there, isn't there? Thanks for sharing that, Alice. Any others? I know it's hard sometimes to think of real life examples on the spot, so I don't want to make people squirm too much. Go on, Carolyn. Yeah, I'd love you to share.
Well, I don't know if this is right, but I was thinking.
There's no right or wrong answers on this, by the way.
Yeah, I guess.
Can't get it wrong.
I think if you're leading a group, certainly one of the things I've felt with group leaders is that they have enabled me to feel more of a valued part of a group by including me, by messaging me, by ringing me, by finding out if I'm okay. But actually, before I said any of that, I wrote down contact Jean, because I haven't spoken to her for a while. And I think that's one of the important things if you're a member of a group, is to make sure that everybody feels part of it and a valued member.
Really nice. Yeah, really good. Yeah, that's a kind of a washing people's feet kind of thing, isn't it? Like caring for them in that really real way.
Not so smelly. No, they might not have been that smelly. But they would have been very dusty, the feet.
Anyone else?
Well, kindness, I think we've had a few people in our lives who've really supported us, even when we're floundering, basically. Really young Christians, clueless, and people were there for us. They encouraged us, and I think that they were kind. And I think that's huge, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, you can feel that kindness coming from people, can't you? If they're genuine, they really care about you. It makes you feel, oh, actually, I can cope with this. You know, I can learn, I can grow.
I don't mean to like embarrass him, because I know this is an online thing, but I would say that the biggest example of servant leadership is my husband. We'll get all teary about it, but he's always, he never ever puts himself forward, yet he's always pushing other people forwards, and always like in the background, always being the biggest cheerleader, always being the biggest support, always being the person that, you know, from the first, you know, for the first cup of coffee in the morning, to the last slice of cake that you might give to you in the evening. He is just constantly helping people. His job's helping people. His job's loving people. You know, if he's walking, you know, if he's driving in his car and he sees someone needing help, he will stop and he'll help them. And the last thing he wants me to say is that, because I know he'd be quite, you know, I'm not embarrassed about it, but he just goes, I just like helping people. But he is the biggest example for me, and I'm so blessed to have him. But yeah, massive.
Love that. What a fantastic example. Yeah, and I see that so much. And I've written a few names down, but one of the names I've written down is Sam. Because I think there's something, and our marriage is a long way away from perfect a lot of the time, but I do think there's something in God's design for marriage that we lead one another. Absolutely. You know, I very much believe marriage is a partnership of leaders, but it's serving one another and serving out inside your family and outside of your family, that you're a leadership team that has mutual benefit to each other and is called to be, what does it say in Ephesians 5? Submit to one another out of reverence to Christ. And so that's servant-hearted leadership. So fantastic. Yeah. And I appreciate that's not always easy in marriages, and I'm not saying that as a kind of over idealized thing. I know there's kind of often pain in the mix within marriages around that, but I think that's kind of God's blueprint, if you know, and yeah, often there's heart and hands to work on in that particular area of life. Yeah.
I would put PJ's Jason in that sort of category.
Bless you, Alice. So good to have you with us. You contribute so richly to these discussions.
Sorry.
Bless you. Sorry, just saying goodbye to Alice, who's heading off.
Oh, bye, Alice.
I want to say something about this. Was last Sunday, not this Sunday, last Sunday, yeah, the Sunday I was in the worship, and yeah, it was two Sundays ago. I remember Tim, you serving in small things, no, from all. It's something I saw in you, and I would like this opportunity to say that I thought about this, no, that being a person who everyone can see and is, I don't know how to explain this, but it's something I saw in you, serving in small things like the projector, chairs, and all of this stuff. And I see this is amazing from you. I think it's a good example for all of we. And so I still want to say this.
No, thank you, Esther. That's very kind. Bless
Yeah, I
you.
agree.
Bless
Absolutely.
you. I think the person who leads All Nations Church, a guy called Richard Green, has set me a really strong example of servant-hearted leadership. And one of the main ways he did that is in a context no one else would have known about, really. But when I moved out from my mum and dad's house and I was living with a couple of friends from the church, he came and put some shelves up with me and kind of for me / with me, and sort of taught me a little bit of how to do that sort of thing. You know, you just think like no one, like, didn't do that for any, there was no kind of glory to be had. There was no one applauded at the end or any of those sorts of things. It just served me. And I was like a kid. I was 19 years old, and he had a young family, young children. He probably had enough DIY to do in his own house. I probably had, in fact, that's the first time I've really ever thought of that bit of it. He probably, the number of jobs he must have needed to do it at his house. I now know what that's like, whereas I didn't at that time. But isn't that a beautiful picture of just, I'll come and spend that time and that effort and just care for you in that way. Yeah. Yeah, we're really blessed as a church family to have this happening in its droves. You know, I was thinking about Kobe and how he just leads with such a servant heart. James, I mean, I sometimes say to James, I wouldn't be standing if it wasn't for him. You know, he just serves. He absolutely serves his heart out. He just so often his attitude is, how can I make life better for Tim, basically, or how can I kind of help Tim succeed? And don't want to embarrass PJ too much, but she's amazing on our staff team and just serving with that kind of heart. And so we're really blessed with this, guys. And I think so. Like, just think what it does for you. It's such a. I mean, Erica tearing up is no surprise, because it is a deep thing. It's an emotional thing. It's a life-changing thing. It's not small, is it? It's massive and very transformative. So okay, good. So it's really good to think of real life examples and how it impacts us, because it kind of puts legs on it for us as we do it to the others. Right, we'll probably take 10 or 15 more minutes, if that's okay, because I'm conscious that people's time is really valuable. And I've got 7 questions that we'll work through as quickly as we need to, which are these again, this is a bit of John Maxwell stuff. Questions we can ask to help us serve people better. But we might just let them hang in the air. We might talk about them. Let's just see which ones feel like they have the most relevance or kind of traction in us. So 7 questions we can ask.
Go slow. I'm writing these down. So
okay, yeah. Do you know what I could have put them in the chat. Would it be helpful to put them in the chat? Oh, well, Joe,
only if it's not going to take too long to do.
But I'll try and copy them in as we go. Where's chat? There we go. Okay, question 1. What can I do for people to help them succeed? That's kind of maybe a very basic question, but is that whole thing we've been talking about. It's like helping others succeed. It's like the people in our lives living for their kind of benefit rather than our own. I think I think that's James's like approach so often with me. How can I help Tim innovate, succeed? It's the power balance thing, flipping the power pyramid and putting ourselves at the bottom. That's kind of quite a good introductory one. Any thoughts on that, or should we move on? Here's the second one. What do people need from me they may not want to ask for? That's a really good question. It's like a bit of discernment needed, a bit of anticipation needed. Because does anyone else find it hard to ask for things?
Yes,
absolutely. It's really hard, isn't it? It's hard because you don't want to put people out. It's hard because it's vulnerable. We don't want to impose. We might not even want to admit it to ourselves that we need some stuff.
They may not know how to ask.
What'd you say, Karen?
They may not know how to ask, or even that they need to ask.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll come on. Yeah, that's really good.
Is that pretty much like trying to like preempt if someone needs something, you can like discern that and then you can offer yourself before they even ask it? Is that what the question is really?
I think so. I mean, open to other people
Does that make
interpreting it
sense?
differently.
Is that
Yeah.
yeah.
I think what's jumped into my mind is we're not there to rescue people. You know, there's some of my kind of counseling theory jumping in here. It's not like we're the solution, but there is something about anticipating other people and serving other people and putting them first. There's a bit of there's some nuance and some balance there. I don't think we can impose on people wrongly. So it's not about, well, you need this, and even if you don't know you need it, I'm going to give it you anyway. I'm not sure that was Jesus' style. It wasn't like, your feet stink, I'm washing them whether you like it or not. It wasn't hosing people down.
But it's just like little things, isn't it? You see someone crying in the corner and they won't ask for it. They don't want to ask for tissue, but you offer them that.
Yeah.
And then you stand with them and you offer them that, and they might not want to ask you for it, but that's what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Denise will always put 2 glasses of water at the front of church. You know, because she's thinking, oh yeah, the people speaking may need that, and I'll make sure it's there in case. I like to, there's something about that, like generosity of heart that anticipates and serves other people's priorities even. I think that question kicks in on a lot of levels, thinking about our kids. Servant leadership comes in if you've got kids, doesn't it? A lot. I might not want to ask for it. Okay, happy to move on. Next question. What do I do best that allows me to serve others best? I've put what they're called, an apostrophe there that shouldn't be there. I do apologize, PJ. But maybe it should be there. I don't know. Is it a possessive apostrophe? I don't know. But what do we do best? Maybe what's God gifted us in that allows us to serve other people best? What have you got that particularly serves and helps and aids and equips and empowers and raises other people up? Anyone got an answer to that question?
Empathy, compassion, hugs.
Yeah, hugs. Oh, I love that. That's hands and heart. That is, Caroline. Empathy. Yeah, you really do that.
Listening as well.
Listen. Yeah.
Really listening, as opposed to when you're looking all round, but actually really listening.
Yeah, and you do have that, Jan. Yeah. Good to hear people saying some of their strengths here like that. It's good to know your strengths, because they don't say that you're great. They say God's sowed some good stuff in.
Encouraging, exhortation.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Massive. So one of mine, I think it's a little bit of a God-given superpower to kind of be vulnerable and to kind of lower the bar a little bit, almost like pop balloons. I feel like that's something God's gifted me in, to just be a bit real and share and do that in a kind of, I trust, a sort of gentle way that kind of gives permission for other people. So yeah.
And that's you're making yourself vulnerable. And that opens the way for other people to be real, what I could call real, isn't it?
Yeah. I think Anyone else? Adam,
Honesty,
what do you do
isn't
best?
it?
Oh, go on.
Yes.
Sorry, Peter. Honesty.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just thinking, but that not necessarily my superpower, but I definitely comes through from a few people. The fact that they're honest then actually allows other people to admit or to realize that they don't have to be superhuman. They can, yes, we're trusting God, but doesn't mean that everything's going to come up roses.
Yeah.
It's going to be easy.
Good. Yeah. Adam, no need to answer if you don't want to, but just wondered if you've got an answer to this. What do you do best that allows you to serve others best? No, not sure? Oh, I can't hear you, mate. Sorry.
I don't know.
No.
Mm.
Can I tell you one? I
Yes.
love how you turn up. You get to church like ridiculously early. People here probably don't know.
Yeah.
Probably an hour before when you're on sound, because you've learned about yourself. It's good to kind of get things in order for yourself, and then you serve other people brilliantly.
Yeah.
So that kind of diligence and that organization and that sort of art is absolutely outstanding. So that's a really
Massive.
Okay, oh, this is good stuff, guys. Let's go. So, and then here's like a kind of the other side of the same coin that's still just this. We might not share on this one, but what can I work on in me that will help me serve people better? I'm going to add another one in here that's sort of a bit similar. What's it like for people who work with me? He says, wincing slightly.
You've got no worries, Mr. Gannon.
Can I tell you a story? So this is from probably 17 years ago. So it's historical enough to make me feel like I can share it. But there's some truth in this still now. There was a young lad called Alex who was working with me he was like doing a gap year at the church I was at previously, and I was like the youth pastor. And we used to have this big youth outreach. We used to have like 100 kids come every Friday night, and we'd set the room up with about 1 million things. We'd have computer game consoles and football and table tennis, and imagine like a typical youth room, tuck shops, and it was like a good couple of hours work to set the room up. And the team would help pack it down, but basically me and the year team used to set it up on a Friday, and I was away doing some training or something on one particular Friday. And so Alex, bless his heart, had sort of beavered away Friday afternoon, setting the whole room. I say room, it was multiple rooms, but there was one main room. And I walk in with Alex having done most of it. And what do? I say the two things that he'd missed. I want to crawl into a hole, and even now thinking about it. But one of the slightly difficult things about my personality is I can find myself noticing the one thing that hasn't been done, and it's a really, really destructive thing if I don't catch it, and I still don't catch it now. And probably some of you have seen seen echoes of that personality trait at other times. But I do have a little bit of an eye that spots details, and sometimes I kind of, like I was about to use a chair example here, but like when you got rows and rows of chairs in the right line and one's facing the wrong way or something. I don't know. So that's just an honest one from me. It can be a bit like that. I am aware it can be a bit like that for people who work with me, or that's something I can work on in me that will help me serve people better. It was really kind of you, Esther, to mention the kind of serving in practical ways thing. One of the things, I'm a bit of a control freak. Some of my practical stuff is me having anxiety. I'd have never admitted to anxiety 3 years ago. I have some anxiety that goes on, and I try and control it by like running around. So yeah, so like self-awareness is a gift because it's your first step to kind of to working on it. So those are a couple of my sort of less kind of less proud of things, but things it's worth knowing about and working on so that we can serve other people well. So otherwise we can crush. So Alex was crushed. He really, really was crushed because I didn't see all the, 100 things he'd done well, and I just said the 2 things he'd missed. Oh, praise God for mercy and grace and forgiveness. Anything anyone else wants to share on that? Go for it, Paige.
I was just thinking, for me, it's time management, and also being very careful about not being distracted, because if I because of the amount of stuff I've got to do, that if I don't plan it, I mean, I don't have quite the same extent with you when your diary is kind of planned almost throughout the whole day, but I've had to learn to make a plan, otherwise I miss stuff, or I don't have the capacity to do stuff, and therefore being able then to have the time to give to people, I will lose because I've got caught on Facebook, and it's, suddenly an hour's gone by and I'm thinking, hold on a second, I should have been starting that other thing ages ago. And then I'm finding I'm playing catch up all the time, which then doesn't give me the time to put to the other things which actually could serve people. So, I mean, sometimes I find the distractions a good excuse to just kind of hide away from all the stuff that I have to do. Sometimes I kind of feel a little bit overwhelmed, and, I kind of almost, I cheat on giving me time, but then actually it's not proper me time either, because I come out of that time feeling frustrated because I'm not doing. But yeah, so if I could manage my time better, and not allow myself to be distracted, I could probably accomplish a lot more, which would serve many people. And I'm thinking about my family, I'm thinking about, contacting friends and, doing other stuff. But, I think that would really help.
Yeah.
And going back to question 4, what can I work on in me that will help you serve others better? And you're right, it is tied up with 5. I've written down listening and criticism. I can be very critical, especially with my kids. And I think afterwards, it's because my parents were critical with me, and it's a terrible habit, bad thing to have passed on. Yeah. And they don't appreciate it. And now as I look back, I think it's terrible that I treated them like that. So I definitely need to work on that, especially if it comes to English and English grammar and spelling.
But you're noticing it, Carolyn, and that means you're moving the needle forward in some way. Okay, we've got 2 more. Let's say, how will I know I'm serving people well? How do you know? How do you know if the sort of servant-heartedness, servant hands and heart are actually landing, other than their feet smell a little bit?
If they are happy.
They're happy.
Yeah.
Okay,
They
good.
tell you.
They tell you, nice. Yeah,
you can see them succeeding.
Good, yeah, flourishing and succeeding like that. I think Maxwell says in his book, I made like just a few little notes. He talks about asking good questions and agreeing on clear expectations. So we might, do you know that thing of like, what do people need from me they may not want to ask for? Like there is something about like checking on expectations and actually talking, asking. Did that help? Did that help when I did that? Do you actually want a drink of water at the front of church, or am I just kind of? I don't know. Like there's, yeah. I do like that like intuition thing that you said there, Ike, about like I see their disposition change. I see they're happy. I think there is we do know as well, don't we? I think if we're in a relationship with people, we see them thriving and flourishing and succeeding. So, but yeah, so it's good, worth noticing. Kind of, is this having the effect I wanted it to have? I think like we have blind spots, don't we? It kind of does tie into the other question about what is it like for people to work with me. We have blind spots, and so sometimes we're not aware of our impact, the positive or the negative. Right, last one. How can I serve people in a way that will inspire them to serve others? So ultimately, this should be a multiplication thing, shouldn't it? This should be a what's it when the curve goes, an exponential thing. Like if this should kind of be contagious and catch and spread. That's why I think we do. I think there is something of God's grace on us as a church family, that this is something that does. I think I'd say this is a character trait of who we are as a family, but hopefully it's an increasing thing as well.
Sorry, Tim, it's been a really long day. Can you repeat that question?
Yes, I've put it in the chat, but yeah, how can I serve people in a way that would inspire them to then serve others?
Right.
So my throat's going as well. So
I think sometimes it's difficult to answer all of these questions because you think you are doing well, you are doing right. But sometimes you don't realize how people is looking at you and how they are looking at all of these things, So sometimes you need someone close to you to give you a real feedback about everything.
Amen. Yeah, feedback's so valuable if we're open to it, and there's trusted friends that can say, are you aware that had that unintended impact, or well done, keep going, that really made a difference. That's huge.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I think that.
Yes. Oh, sorry, go on, Vicky, again.
The tendency is to, if you've got a heart for people, you love people, you want to do everything for them. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes you have to step back.
Yes.
Give them a chance to flourish.
Yeah.
Because if you love them, you just want to be there for them. And I think you have to seek God for ways in which you can put them forward. Give them the support, but not doing everything for them. It's the same with our children, isn't it? We want to do everything for them, but sometimes we're overprotective, and they can't flourish so well.
Yeah.
They have to stand back and perhaps let them make mistakes.
Yeah.
But just be there for supporting them.
Yeah. I think when we serve, when we are those servant-hearted leaders, the impact it has on others is they want that it is so transformational and so powerful that it does bring about that same desire to do that for other people. So I think it does is a really encouraging thing that it doesn't just impact that person, but it has that knock-on effect to the people they're serving to. Guys, it's been a really rich session, this.
Can I just add one thing to the last thing? Is that all right? That last question about how can I serve people in a way that will inspire them to serve others, you can really tie it into the scripture that we first had. Like, because when Jesus washed the feet, it kind of helped others find their salvation, and it helped them move on and help people be in a place to really live for God. So I guess it kind of links it to that.
That's brilliant. You've brought that full circle beautifully there, Erica. Yeah, that is exactly what Jesus was doing. He was serving people in a way that inspired them to go and do what he's been doing. Guys, thank you for tonight. I love us to just end in prayer, praying for hearts and praying for hands, and praying that as the days and weeks unfold ahead, that God helps some of these questions just kind of stay with us, because a lot of them are to be worked out in the long haul, aren't they? So yeah, let's just end it with some prayer. Jesus, thank you for this incredible leader that you are, and this example you set. The way you were so practical, drying and towels and basins and all of that stuff, and you're so humble. You're so loving. You loved them and you loved us to the very end. And then you call us to be leaders like that. You empower us. You didn't hold on to power or grasp power. You, the most powerful human ever to walk this planet, gave power away and gave authority to us and commission us and delegate and release us. And I pray, Lord, that we would do the same for others. We'd serve, we'd humble ourselves, we'd take that lowest position. We would spot the need, and we would get hands-on with people, and we'd have a heart that really loves and really cares and is full of compassion. And we pray in turn that would then inspire others to also do that in turn. It would be one of those sort of knock-on things, one of those growing things that as we serve others, they serve others, and it just grows and grows. I pray for good self-awareness. I pray for feedback that helps us know our strengths, but also recognize our blind spots and our sort of unintended impact on others. Yeah, pray, Lord God, that we'd have hearts and hands of a servant, and it'd be all for your glory.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Oh man, well, thank you so much for your time. It's a very humbling thing that people give up their time to come and be part of this, and yeah, that's a real blessing. And so our last one is the 28th. I need to say the wrong number. 24th of April, and we'll leave it there at that one. So yeah, calling and gifting. Bless you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks again.